Maliha and Nabiha Masood were sisters from South London, England. At the time of the incident, Maliha was just 15 years old, while her older sister Nabiha was 21. They lived with their two brothers, Junaid, who was 17, and Zain, who was 24, as well as their mother, Rubina Masood, a woman of 55 years. Their father had passed away 2 years earlier when Maliha was just 13. The loss left a silence in the house, and in that silence, the family, already devout in their beliefs, seemed to become even more tightly bound to their faith. The Masood household was a strict Muslim household, very traditional, very controlled. Maliha, being the youngest, was always seen as the baby of the family. Her brother Zain once said that everyone treated her like she was fragile, like she needed to be protected. She was loved without question, but also watched closely. She had a bubbly personality, made friends easily, and was known for her warmth. But behind that energy, she was also carrying a secret she couldn't tell her family, because she knew how they'd react. Back in 2009, when Maliha was just 14 years old, she met a boy her age named Akmal Mia. It happened during a casual day out with friends, a fleeting moment, a teenage spark. But for Maliha and Akmal, it became something more. They started seeing each other, an on-again, off-again teenage relationship, full of texts, little meetups, and emotions that felt too big to hold quietly. But they had to be quiet, because no one in Maliha's family could ever find out. Honestly, I think Maliha just wanted something of her own, a corner of her life not controlled by tradition, not weighed down by expectations. But in a house where faith was everything, secrets were dangerous. And soon, that secret would unravel everything. Nabiha Masood, like I said, was 21 years old. Quiet, kind, very homely, the kind of girl who loved being around family. Her older brother Zain described her as gentle, thoughtful, never the center of attention. She was engaged to be married that year, with her wedding planned for October 2009. Her fiancé loved her deeply, and she had looked forward to that future with quiet excitement. But that future would never come. In the early hours of June 21st, 2009, at 4:30 in the morning, a fire broke out at the Masood family home in South London. Everyone in the house was asleep, scattered in their individual bedrooms. But fate intervened, in the form of a woman named Carmen Peterkin. She was driving with her daughter, just passing by in the stillness of early morning when she spotted smoke pouring from the house. Without hesitation, she screamed out of her car window, shouting, pleading, trying to wake the sleeping family inside. She also called 999, and her voice worked. The Masoods woke up, panicked and confused, their home filling quickly with thick, choking smoke. They screamed to each other, banging on walls, trying to find one another in the chaos. But the fire had already consumed the entire ground floor. Their only hope now was to escape through the windows upstairs. The first to make it out was Zain, the eldest sibling at 25 years old. He would later describe what happened in heartbreaking detail. "I instinctively went to get my brother and sisters, but when I opened the door, the heat hit me. The smoke was too thick. I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe. I opened the window, looked down, and just jumped." Next to escape was Rubina, their mother. At 55 years old, she also managed to jump from her bedroom window, her body bruised but alive. Outside, Carmen's screams had woken the neighbors, and now people were spilling into the street, confused, terrified. They quickly learned that 3 people were still inside: Maliha, Nabiha, and Junaid. Neighbors tried everything. They smashed windows, tried to kick the front door down. Eventually, they managed to break in through the back kitchen door, but the heat and smoke were unbearable. No one could make it inside without gear. They had to wait for the professionals. When firefighters arrived, they wasted no time. Ladders were pushed up to the windows. Fire crews in full gear rushed to retrieve the remaining family members. All 3 were recovered, but not all of them were conscious. Junaid was alive, but in critical condition. He was rushed straight to a specialized burn unit. Maliha was found at the bottom of her bunk bed. She wasn't breathing. Her heart had stopped. Firefighters carried her out, lifeless. But then a police officer began CPR, refusing to give up. And slowly, her heart began to beat again. She was alive, barely. Her condition was critical, and her family could only wait and hope. Maliha Massoud had been pulled from the fire barely alive. She had no pulse when they found her, and even though a police officer managed to bring her heart back, the damage had already been done. She had suffered severe carbon monoxide, poisoning, and irreversible brain damage. Doctors did everything they could. They tried to reverse the effects, try to stabilize her, but nothing worked. For 3 days, Maliha lay unconscious on life support. And on June 25, 2009, her machines were quietly, gently turned off. She was just 15 years old. A month later, on July 20th, her brother Zain, the first to jump from the burning house, was discharged from the hospital. He had suffered serious burns across his hands, arms, and face, as well as some internal damage to his lungs. Physically, he was healing, but the pain of losing his youngest sister, that kind of wound never really closes. And then, just 5 days later, came another heartbreak. On July 25th, exactly 1 month and a day after Maliha's death, Nabiha Massoud also passed away. She had fought hard. She had suffered extensive burns, and the fumes from a fire had poisoned her lungs beyond recovery. She developed 4 separate respiratory diseases, and eventually, her heart gave out. Her other organs followed. Her fiancé, who had been waiting to marry her just months later, would now have to bury her. She was 21 years old. The last to be released from the hospital was Junaid, the 18-year-old brother who had also been trapped inside. In August 2009, he was finally allowed to go home. He had survived, but he would never be the same. Severe lung damage, deep burns, especially to his hands, which were now too damaged to ever fully recover. Doctors told him he would need to wear protective gloves for the rest of his life, because the skin on his hands would never be normal again. Honestly, I think the word survivor doesn't even begin to cover what Zain and Junaid endured. They didn't just escape a fire. They lost their sisters. They lost the future they thought they'd have. And they came back into a world that would never feel whole again. In the aftermath of the fire, while Rubina, Zain, and Junaid were recovering physically, the emotional wounds from losing Maliha and Nabiha ran deep. The very next day, friends, neighbors, and reporters gathered outside the burned-out shell of the Massoud family home. The air was heavy with shock, grief, and questions that no one yet had the answers to. Among those standing in the crowd was a teenage boy, visibly distraught. 14-year-old Akmal Mia. He was sobbing, speaking to reporters, showing them photos of Maliha, telling them how kind, how beautiful she was, how much he had loved her. But beneath the surface of his grief, something wasn't sitting right. Police, already investigating the fire, had quickly realized that it was not accidental. The flames had started at the front door, an area with no electrical wiring, no reason for a fire to begin naturally. What they did find, however, was a strong trace of petrol on the floor just inside the entryway. Petrol, an accelerant, something used to deliberately set fires. And just like that, the investigation shifted. This was no longer just a tragic fire. It was arson, and possibly murder. Police began calling people in, family, friends, acquaintances, Nabiha's fiancé, and notably, Akmal Mia. At first glance, Akmal looked broken. In the interview room, he was crying, repeating, "I loved her so much. I can't believe she's gone." But when police spoke to Maliha's friends, a very different picture began to emerge. They said that Maliha and Akmal had only dated for around 3 months, and it wasn't the fairy tale romance he was painting. They fought constantly. He was controlling, possessive, and insecure. Her friends described the relationship as toxic and said Maliha had wanted out more than once. But Akmal had something over her. He knew she was keeping their relationship a secret from her family because of how strictly religious they were. And every time Maliha tried to walk away, he would blackmail her. "If you leave me, I'll tell your family everything." And that fear of disappointing them, of what they might do, of being exposed, kept pulling her back in. Honestly, I think Maliha was doing what so many girls her age do, trying to manage an impossible balance between who she wanted to be and who she was expected to be. And in the middle of that quiet struggle, she was being manipulated by someone who saw her fear as leverage. They split up several times, but every time, he dragged her back. And just days before the fire, they had split up again. This time for good, or so she thought. After speaking to Maliha's friends, and learning more about her relationship with Akmal, police decided to take a closer look at Akmal Mia's phone records. They wanted to understand just how deep this connection really went. Was it a typical teenage breakup, or is there something darker beneath the surface? And what they found hinted at something far more troubling. Throughout the span of their short, 3-month relationship, Akmal's digital footprint showed signs of a fixation on Maliha. Not just while they were together, but even during the times they had broken up. Each time Maliha tried to walk away, Akmal would pull her back in, sometimes with emotional pleas, other times with manipulative pressure. Now look, there's always a fine line between someone being deeply in love and someone being unhealthily obsessed. To some, it might seem like the behavior of a heartbroken teenager. To others, it might feel like the early signs of something dangerous. Honestly, I think this is where the story shifts into a very uncomfortable space. Because when love turns into control, and when someone uses guilt or fear to hold on to another person, that's no longer love. That's possession. But I'll let you decide. Was Akmal Mia just a lovesick boy who didn't know how to let go? Or was he already showing signs of something much, much worse? When police reviewed Akmal Mia's phone records, they found that in the 87 days leading up to Maliha's death, he had called or texted her 1,679 times. At first glance, that number seems overwhelming, a flashing red sign of obsession. But then again, spread across nearly 3 months, that works out to around 20 messages a day. And let's be honest, for two teenagers in a relationship, constantly messaging each other doesn't necessarily scream danger. It could even seem normal, maybe even sweet, if it was mutual, if it was healthy. But what makes this different is the tone behind those messages. Because buried in that sea of text were messages like, "I don't want to share you with anyone else. You're my dream girl. I'm not letting you go. I need you like I need my own hand. I could see you having my baby one day." At first glance, you might still brush it off as teenage intensity. But what happened next changes everything. On June 17th, 2009, just 3 days before the fire, Maliha broke up with Akmal for the final time. And that same night, he acted on one of the threats he had been holding over her for months. He called her family. He exposed their secret. He dialed the Masood home phone. Her mother, Rubina, answered. And the boy on the other end, furious, hurt, and manipulative, said, "She's finished with me. She has loads of friends. Take the phone off her. When she was studying, she was talking to me. When she was using the computer, she was talking to me." He was unraveling every lie Maliha had built to keep herself safe. And he knew it. Then, on June 19th, the night before the fire, Akmal called again. This time, the tone was darker. "I'll F*** your family up," he said. "Watch what I'm going to do." Maliha was terrified. She was crying, shaking. She finally broke down and did something she had been dreading. She handed the phone to her mother and confessed everything. Every lie, every fear. Akmal had pulled her back with blackmail. Rubina took the phone from her daughter, and on the other end, Akmal just kept repeating, "I love her. I love her. I love her." Rubina, quiet, stunned, told him, "This is not how things are done in our religion." And she hung up. But Akmal wasn't done. When police found out about the threats, they seized his laptop. And what they found was the most incriminating discovery of the entire case. The first thing they saw when they opened his device, his laptop wallpaper, the background image on his screen, was a photograph of the burned-down Masood home. Then they opened his Google search history. And on the night before the fire, Akmal had typed in one single devastating phrase: how to burn someone's house down. Honestly, I think that's the moment where any doubt disappears. Because this wasn't a heartbreak. It wasn't grief. It wasn't love. It was planned, cold, deliberate. Akmal Mia wanted revenge, and he was willing to destroy an entire family to get it. As investigators dug deeper into Akmal Mia's phone records, they discovered a key piece of information, something logged on his phone long before he became a suspect. On the night of the fire, Akmal had made calls to 2 other boys, his 21-year-old cousin, Shahabuddin Chowdhury, and another friend, 19-year-old Rasan Khan. With this connection, all 3 were quickly arrested on suspicion of 2 counts of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. When brought in for questioning, each of them denied everything. No involvement, no knowledge, no responsibility. But the evidence against them was building fast. Police searched Akmal's home, and inside his bedroom, they found something chilling: empty cans of petrol. This supported a now solid theory that the boys had poured petrol through the letterbox of the Masood family home and set it on fire. And then, a local corner shop owner stepped forward with even more damning information. He told police that on the very night of the fire, two young men, who matched the description of Akmal Mia and Shiabuddin Chowdhury, entered his shop and purchased a box of matches. And just hours later, a house went up in flames. Two sisters were dead. The shopkeeper made the connection and reported it to police. With the Google search, how to burn someone's house down, the empty petrol cans, the recorded threats, the phone calls, and now a witness statement placing Akmal and Shiabuddin at the scene the night of the fire. It was enough. All three, Akmal Mia, Shiabuddin Chowdhury, and Rasan Khan, were officially charged with 2 counts of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. As the trial began, each of the 3 defendants stood before the court: Akmal Mia, his cousin Shiabuddin Chowdhury, and 19-year-old Rasan Khan. From the very beginning, Rasan's involvement had been uncertain. His name had only surfaced because of a phone call logged on Akmal's device the night of the fire. He hadn't been seen at the shop. He hadn't been caught in any Google searches. There were no petrol cans, no threats, and no physical evidence tying him to the crime. Yes, he could have been involved. Yes, it looked suspicious. But suspicion isn't guilt. And so, the jury found Rasan Khan not guilty on all charges. He was released, free to walk out of the courtroom. That left 2. And during Akmal Mia's trial, he immediately turned on his cousin, Shiabuddin Chowdhury. He claimed it was all Shiabuddin's idea, that he was the one who poured the petrol. He lit the flame. He orchestrated everything. But the evidence didn't support that, because it was Akmal who had Googled how to burn someone's house down, set the burned home as his laptop wallpaper, made the threats to Malia's family, bought the matches, and held the motive: rage, jealousy, and revenge. The jury wasn't buying it, and the courtroom knew it. In the end, both Akmal Mia and Shiabuddin Chowdhury were found guilty of all charges. They had taken 2 lives and nearly taken 3 more. They had destroyed a family, all because one girl wanted to leave a relationship she never should have been in to begin with. The judge handed down 2 life sentences. Akmal Mia received a minimum of 23 years behind bars. Shiabuddin Chowdhury was given a minimum of 21 years. Neither of them showed remorse. Neither of them would walk free for a very long time, if ever. Honestly, I think there's something deeply haunting about this case. Not just because of the fire, not just because of the loss, but because this all began with silence. A girl too afraid to tell her family who she was dating, and a boy too angry to let her go. And that silence, that fear, that obsession ended in flames.